हेलो एवरीवन। इस वीडियो में हम लोग बात करने वाले हैं वेर, लेट और कॉन्स्ट वेरिएबल टाइप की। दिस इज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट कॉमन क्वेश्चन दैट यू माइट गेट आस्क्ड इन एन इंटरव्यू। सो वी विल डिस्कस द डिफरेंस अमंग दीज थ्री on three major points. So one is going to be scoping, and second one is going to be declaration and assignment, and third is going to be hoisting. Right now, hoisting is not limited to variables, it also applies to classes and functions, but we will get into that later. So let's start with the scoping part. So there are major three types of scoping that you will see. One is global, second is block, or third is function. Right, so in these three scoping, we will try to differentiate how let works, and how where works, how const works, and all these things. So let's start with where. So let's say we have a where variable. We will name it, let's say, greeting where, और हम इसको एक वैल्यू देते हैं hello. Right, so hello from where. Right, so this is the value. Now if you'll console log, we will obviously see this. Right, nothing new. Now we can do the same thing with let. If I'll say let here and change this to let, we will see the same thing. If I try to print let. Now let's talk about the scoping. So if I'll say where is function scoped, right? And let and const are block scoped, right? So we have these two scopes for these. Now, so when the global scope used, and right, how can we define? So in this particular scenario, let and where both are present in global scope, because we are not writing them inside any function or any block. So these two by default are present in the global scope. So for this particular use case, it is going to be global, right, for both of these. And if I'll define const, that will also be in the global scope, right? So let's do that quickly. I'll say const, and I'll write const here as well. So nothing new till here, but right now they are present in the global scope and you can use them here without any issue. Right, now this is what we are getting. Now let's try to move these inside a block, and then we will see like how they are differentiated. So first is, let's create a block here if true, and I'll try to use them inside this block. Now I don't see any difference. Now why is that? Because I have already moved these variable inside a block, but still I get the same result. Now there is something called lexical, right? So lexical scoping is basically the ability, or a sort of like, this is what used by JavaScript. It's a concept which is used by JavaScript, that which states that we should be able to access variables from the parent scope. So if something is defined in the parent scope, the child scope should be able to use it. And this is what's happening here. हमने इन तीन वेरिएबल्स को ग्लोबल स्कोप में डिफाइन किया है, और हम इसको एक ब्लॉक स्कोप विच इज अ चाइल्ड ऑफ दिस ग्लोबल स्कोप, we are able to use it. So this is what lexical is, and it is followed by where, let, and const. Right, so if we will create one more block here, we still be able to use these variables. So this is what we do with lexical. Now let's move these variables from global to block scope. Now as you know that this is a block, this is not a function, this is a block. So nothing is going to change for where. Where will still be present in the global scope, and it's not that if you are defining it in a block, it will be present in global. If we will write a function here, let's say function sum, and I meant to write something, and I'll say this, in this case, this variable is function scoped, right? So it will be present inside the function, but we will get to that later. For now, just forget that. And this is what we have. So for this particular variable, global is going to be the scope, but for let and const, it's going to change to block. So I can just write block here. Block here. So if I take this and move these outside, so what should be the output in this case? Because these block, so this is the variables which are defined with let and const are only limited to this particular block. तो अगर हम इनको बाहर यूज करने का ट्राई करेंगे, if you are going to use them outside, this is not going to work. But because for var it's global, it's going to work for var. So let's save this and see. So hello from var works as expected because it's still global, but for block level elements, for block level variables, it's not going to work. And if I comment out let also, it's going to give error for const because it's not working at all. So how do we, so this is one of the difference, that if you are using block, it will be accessible outside the block for var, but not for let and const. Now let's define a function that we had earlier. So this function, something is there, and we move everything from here to here. Now when I say do this and call this function, so what should happen? We get the same result, right? We are still able to access var because the usage of var is still inside the function. We are still using it inside the function. But let's say if I move this var, right, outside this function, let's say somewhere here, right? So if I do this, it says greeting var is not defined because now we are trying to use it outside this function. So in this case, the scoping is function. So so it's present, this greeting var is present inside the function. If we will move this from here to here, then we should be able to see this working. But if we try to use it outside the function, we won't be able to. So that is one of the main difference that you will see in terms of scoping among these three variables, right? Now to make this work, I need to use these inside block, and if I do this, it all works fine, right? And if I create one more block here, then we know it's lexical. So creating a block here not gonna change anything for us. We should be able to use these inside this block also because we are able to access this from the parent. So this is a basic difference in terms of scoping. So let's I'll just comment this out, everything just for reference, and move to declaration and assignment, right? So how declaration and assignment work? So let's start with var. So we will do the same thing, greeting var, and we have var, we'll just write var here. So this is what we have. Now if we will try to say console.log and say greeting var, we get the same result. Okay, nothing new here. Now let's try to do one thing. We say greeting var is equals to var variable, right? We do something like this and try to console this. So we get var and var variable. So we are able to reassign value to this. In fact, what we can do, we can also redeclare var. So when I do this, it's going to work same, because with var you can actually redeclare var as many times as you want, and it is going to just replace and override the previous declaration that you had. So when it comes here on 24, it is referring to this one, but now it is referring to this one. Now after redeclaring it, wherever you will use it, if you go to some other line, some other block, let's say some other block, and try to write this here, it's going to print var variable because this has been replaced with this one, this declaration. So this is something that you can do with var. But when it comes to let, so let's say let greeting let, I'll say let, and I'll say greeting let again. So it is giving me an error. It says cannot redeclare block scoped variable greeting let. So because let cannot be redeclared, but in let you can assign the value. So if I remove the let reassigned, right? So if I write this and remove this let from here, I'm able to see that yeah, it's taking it now. So I'll say console.log, और यहाँ पर अगर मैं यहाँ पे लिखता हूँ greeting let and I save this, I get let, and यहाँ पर अगर मैं इसको दोबारा से कंसोल करता हूँ after reassigning the value, तो I get the new value. So I am able to reassign the value to let, but I'm not able to redeclare the value let. But if you remember, it said when I go back and do this, the error that I get is in VS Code is cannot redeclare block scoped variable, right? So this is block scoped variable जिसको आप redeclare नहीं कर सकते हो, but only inside the same scope. So अगर मैं इसको यहाँ से हटाकर, right, if I remove this and put it here in a different block, then I am able to redeclare, right? So let को हम redeclare कर सकते हैं, लेकिन same scope में redeclare नहीं कर सकते. var को हम same scope में भी redeclare कर सकते हैं, right? So this is one of the main difference between var and let. Now let's think about the usage of this, right? अगर मैं यहाँ पर इसको यूज करता हूँ, let me save this, I get let reassigned, right? This is what's been printed on this line number 33. So is it overriding the value? No. What's happening is in this particular scope, we have a new variable which is greeting let. It is only limited to this scope. So if we go outside this scope and try to print this, we will get the same value which we have in this scope, which is let. So let's try that. We'll say greeting let and print this. So in line number 37, right? Line number 37, we are getting let again. So it's only limited to this scope. So whenever, if you'll go inside and create one more scope, one more child scope here. So in this, if you'll try to print this again, you will see the let reassigned, right? 37, because it is only referring to its parent. As soon as it finds this variable in the parent scope, it is just going to use this. So it happens in, like, when you will be writing code, it happens that you might declare variables, let variables with same name, and sometimes people get confused, like different values are coming. So it happens because of this, because you can redeclare in different scope. So now let's talk about const. So const, as the name suggests, it's constant, right? You cannot redeclare this and you cannot reassign this, right? So with let, what happens if I do this, right? I'll say 1 2 3 4 5, I can do this. This is possible, but for const it's not possible. If I'll say 1 2 3, and if I'll say greeting const is equals to something else and try to console log greeting const, if I do this, I get a error, assignment to constant variable. So this is not allowed. So constant is constant, you cannot change its value. And if you would notice, if you don't assign anything to this, it will give you an error, because by default whenever you declare a variable, JavaScript assigns a value to this which is undefined. In JavaScript, undefined is a value. So this is equivalent to writing something like this, greeting const is equals to undefined. So in JavaScript, this is equivalent to writing this. So if you are writing const this, then undefined is there. So again, its const declaration must be initialized. So because you won't be able to use this. Only value which will be present in this will be undefined. So that's why you need to initialize this always. You cannot write const and assign the value later on, right? So that is one thing. Now let's go back to some other example. So this is constant variable. You cannot reassign the value here, and you cannot even redeclare. So if I do const, you cannot even redeclare, but you can reassign and you can't even reassign. So with var you can redeclare and reassign. With let you cannot redeclare, but you can reassign. With const you can't even redeclare nor you can reassign the value. So this is that. Now if I remove this from here and go inside the scope again, I should be able to use this. So this works exactly how it works for let in terms of using the variable. But if I if I come here and do this, it is going to give us the same result that gave us for let, because now this greeting const is coming from the same scope and this greeting const is coming from its parent scope in this particular scope. So this is how they differentiate in terms of assignment and redeclaration or declaration, right? Now let me just comment out all of this, and if you have any questions or any confusion, do put those in the comments. I'll try to answer as much as I can. Now let's talk about hosting. So with hosting, what happens is it's easy to visualize if I say that when I'm writing, let's say a var greeting, let's say var I have a value 10, right? I have this and it's a string value. I'll console log this, console.log greeting var. So when I do this, I get this value undefined. And if I do the same thing with let, greeting let, right, I get cannot access greeting let before initialization. So what is happening? Why let is working, but why const is why var is working but not let working? Now let's try for const also. And this is right. So we are getting this error here. So this is not even executing, but it's okay. I can try to maybe comment out this and see. Say const cannot access greeting const before initialization. So for let and const we are getting the same error, but we are not getting any error for var. So let's see why it's that. So when we say var greeting var, right, when we are trying to use a variable before initializing the variable or before even defining the variable. So the concept of hosting says, so whenever this code is executed, right, so what JavaScript will do, JavaScript will take this line number 55 and put this on top of this line number 54 and say var greeting let and undefined, right? So this is something which will be done by JavaScript. Now the reason I'm saying that it is going to take line number 55, put it to move it to line number 53, this is not actually what happens. The reason I'm saying this, क्योंकि visualize करने में थोड़ा easy है, but JavaScript prioritize करती है declarations को पहले before executing your all these console log and all the other parts of the code. JavaScript इस तरीके से वर्क करती है कि जो declarations होते हैं उनको वो पहले execute करती है. तो जब वो देखती है कि var है और greeting var हमारा variable है, तो with var what JavaScript does, JavaScript उसे एक undefined value से initialize कर देती है and उसको move कर देती है at the top of its scope. अब वो स्कोप कुछ भी हो, राइट अगर वो ग्लोबल स्कोप है तो वो ग्लोबल स्कोप पे जाएगा सबसे ऊपर, अगर वो फंक्शन के अंदर है तो वो फंक्शन के एट द टॉप चला जाएगा, या वो ब्लॉक के अंदर है वेर के केस में तो वो हमेशा फंक्शन के टॉप पर जाएगा, फंक्शन क्योंकि इट्स फंक्शनल स्कोप, या फिर वो ग्लोबल स्कोप में एकदम टॉप पर चला जाएगा। तो इट डजेंट मैटर कि मेरे पास यहाँ कुछ कोड है, यहाँ कुछ कोड है ना, मेरे पास कुछ भी कोड हो सकता है कहीं भी, जैसे मैंने यहाँ कुछ लिखा, यहाँ कुछ लिखा, तो ऐसा नहीं है कि वो इस पर्टिकुलर लाइन के ऊपर जाएगी। ये डिक्लेरेशन वो देखेगा कि ये यहाँ से मेरा फाइल चालू हो रहा है, तो ये जो पर्टिकुलर वेरिएबल है इट विल मूव टू एट द टॉप, और यहाँ पे इसको अनडिफाइंड वैल्यू दी जाएगी। बट दिस डज नॉट हैपन विद लेट। लेट को भी जावास्क्रिप्ट मूव तो करती है ऊपर, लेट को भी जावास्क्रिप्ट ऐसे लेके जाती है, ग्रीटिंग यू नो लेट, लेकिन उसको इनिशियलाइज नहीं करती है। इसको यहाँ पर इनिशियलाइज किया गया है, राइट इसको यहाँ पे इनिशियलाइज किया गया है, बट इसको इनिशियलाइज नहीं किया जाता, इसको ऐसे ही रख दिया जाता है। सेम थिंग हैपन्स विद कॉन्स्ट। कॉन्स्ट को भी जावास्क्रिप्ट मूव करती है ऊपर, लेकिन इनिशियलाइज नहीं करती है। तो उससे क्या होता है, वी गेट दिस एरर दैट आइडेंटिफाई ग्रीटिंग लेट हैज बीन, okay, this is something else only. I'll comment out this also. Let me, sorry, what is happening here, let me see. So greeting let, greeting, okay, I wrote greeting let instead of greeting where. So this is actually for where, what I was trying to explain you is for where. So जब हम ये लिखते हैं let, तो हमें जो एरर आता है वो एरर भी यही कहता है कि कैन नॉट एक्सेस ग्रीटिंग लेट बिफोर इनिशियलाइजेशन। इट्स नॉट सेइंग दैट इट्स नॉट डिफाइंड, इट इज डिफाइंड। सो इफ आई कमेंट आउट दिस, then I get an error that greeting let is not defined, it's not defined at all. But if I do it, it says it's not initialized. So JavaScript इसको ऊपर तो लेकर जा रही है, right? So let greeting let, but इसको initialize नहीं करती है, so that's why we get this error. And same thing happens with const as well. So this is what it is. Now apart from this, there is nothing else that happens in terms of hoisting. So this is a very important topic, but it's not a very big, like it's not very complex functionality. It's just that JavaScript कोड को इस तरीके से रीड करती है, और इन टर्म्स ऑफ लेट एंड कॉन्स्ट वो उसको इनिशियलाइज नहीं करती, वो उसको मूव करती है ऊपर, बट उसको इनिशियलाइज नहीं करती है, और हमेशा वो मूव करती है विद इन द स्कोप. सो इफ इट्स अ फंक्शन स्कोप्ड, वो उसके टॉप ऑफ द फंक्शन चला जाएगा. इफ इट्स ब्लॉक स्कोप्ड, वो उस ब्लॉक के टॉप पे चला जाएगा, राइट. सो एंड इट्स नॉट लिमिटेड टू वेरिएबल्स, वो वेरिएबल्स तक लिमिटेड नहीं है. फंक्शंस, क्लासेस, वेरिएबल्स, on all these three, hoisting works. So if I'll write a function here, let's say something, right, something console.log from something, right. I write something like this. Let me just comment out everything, right. I write this and I try to use this function before, before defining. So I do this, I am still able to use it, because this is what happens when hosting works. So this is happening because of the hosting. Now if I change this to, let's say, var, and I guess like you might have seen these arrow functions, right. So if I do, it says something is not a function. So why it is not working? Because hosting is happening, right. Now this var is going at the top and it is getting changed to this something, and the value is undefined initially until it reaches this line. So the value is undefined, and undefined is not a function. So what we are doing is we are actually just trying to execute undefined, which is not going to work. So this is because the hosting is working, right. Hosting is working, but this undefined thing is coming, so that's why it's saying something is not a function. And if I do let and all, so in this case we will go get the same error, that something before initialization, we are trying to access something before initialization, so it's not initialized. right? Same thing will happen with const. So it's not that functions are not hoisted. If I change this to a traditional function instead of a arrow function, it is going to be hosted. Now when I'm changing it to arrow functions, it's actually converting it to variable, right? Because we are assigning that function into a variable. So you can assign any value. So it can be object, string, primitive, non-primitive, data type, like whatever you want to assign, you can assign that to the variable. So, and same thing happens with class. So if you do, let's say have a class of, I don't know, I think I cannot think of anything else than something today. So let's say you have a class here, and okay, yeah, you have a class here, and with this class you create some greeting. Let's say greeting is there, and what it does, it just console log your greeting. So this is what you have. Now what we will do, we will have constant something equals to new something, right? And I'll try to say something here dot greeting, and if I execute this, I say I get that something before initialization, right? So we cannot use this before initialization. Now why it is happening, why hoisting is not working for class? So हमें यहाँ पर सेम एरर दिख रहा है जो हमें const और let के केस में दिखने को मिलता था कि cannot access something before initialization. So the hoisting is happening for class also. It's just that class is being declared, but the value is not initialized. So everything that you see inside something class, right, it's not initialized yet, but it has been hoisted. So that's why you don't say it's not declared. So if I remove this, right, and if I remove this and then I try to use it, it will say something is not defined. So that's where the declaration issue comes in. But in this case, it's actually defined, it is being hosted, but the value of the class is not initialized. So that's why we get before initialization we cannot use this. So when I move this piece of code below this class, it's gonna work, right? So these are the main difference that you can that comes in var, let and const. If there is anything that you guys did not understand, do let me know in the comments, and I'll try to clarify those. And if there is any concept that you want me to cover in another video, just let me know. I'll create a video on that one. Till then, have a great time. Thank you. Bye.